Hold on tight, because I'm not going to take any prisoners. This is the Mitsubishi Outlander, 3rd generation, PHEV, 2nd facelift. Let's go for a drive and talk about how interesting the powertrain is, and then I'll tell you why Mitsubishi is useless when it comes to packaging their cutting-edge tech. The Mitsubishi Outlander is a popular compact crossover, or even an SUV as some like to call it. With an internal combustion engine, it even comes as a 7-seater, an ideal car to drive your kids to school, do shopping, go for vacation, but as far as technology goes, it's nothing particularly exciting. But in 2012, Mitsubishi launched a plug-in hybrid version. PHEVs are nothing new, and their history dates back to 1899 and the Lerner Porsche mixed hybrid. In the 1960s, GM experimented with plug-in hybrids as well, and then in 2003, Renault offered a Kangoo PHEV van. And then there were Fisker, Ford, Toyota, and others. However, the Mitsubishi hybrid system is a bit more complicated. Most of the time, the Outlander PHEV is powered by 2 electric motors, one per axle. They get their power from a traction battery under the floor. The traction battery can be charged from an electric socket or via the petrol engine, which can act as a generator like in the Chevy Volt or Opel Ampera, or in certain conditions it can also power the front wheels. All this is supposed to ensure optimum efficiency. What's it like in real life? The pre-facelift Outlander PHEV could drive 30, maybe 40 kilometers on batteries, and then it went into hybrid mode. It would then use about 6 liters per 100 kilometers in the city, and on the motorway it was a gas guzzler. The refreshed Outlander PHEV gets slightly denser batteries, which now have 13.8 kilowatt hours. They should be enough for about 45 kilometers extra-urban and up to 57 kilometers in the city, according to WLTP. And indeed, I easily got about 50 around the city without the petrol engine kicking in. The engine has also changed. Instead of a 2-liter unit, there is now a 2.4-liter engine, which is a bit more quiet once it kicks in, because it doesn't need to rev as high. So that's good. The Outlander PHEV can drive in electric, series hybrid, or parallel hybrid mode. In series hybrid mode, the petrol engine charges the traction battery, and in parallel hybrid mode, the engine powers the front wheels and sends excess energy to the traction battery. The car can drive up to 135 km per hour in pure electric mode. On the motorway below that speed, unless we force the battery save or battery charge mode, the petrol engine will shut off every now and then, and the car will drive a kilometer or two using accumulated electric energy. Then the engine will turn back on, charge the batteries for a bit, and then turn off again. At about 120 km per hour, fuel economy should be around 7 liters per 100 kilometers. As you approach 135 km per hour, you'll be getting about 9 liters per 100 kilometers. And if you drive any faster, you'll quickly exceed 10 liters per 100 kilometers. You can force the car to charge the batteries along the way. For every kilometer driven, you'll get around 1 kilometer of extra electric range, more off the motorway, less on the motorway, where the petrol engine spends more time turning the front wheels. Of course, the battery charge mode will mean higher fuel consumption, but it's for emergency situations like when you need to drive into a zero emission zone and there wasn't an opportunity to recharge the batteries from the grid. Speaking of charging, you can do it from a regular home socket. The Outlander can take up to 3.7 kilowatts. I have 2.1 kilowatts at home, so it takes about 7 hours to charge the Outlander PHEV batteries from empty to full. There is also a Shadow socket, but that can take only up to 22 kilowatts. That's still enough to recharge from empty to 80% in about half an hour. It's also a good idea to use recuperation. There are 5 stages and you can adjust it with paddle shifters. After a while, you learn to judge distance and you recharge while decelerating. If you like efficient driving, this sort of thing should be up your alley.
But the Outlander PHEV is, at least according to Mitsubishi, a combination of experience gained through the i-MiEV, through the Pajero, through the Lancer Evo. So the Outlander should be good not only in the electric mode, but also it should offer at least adequate dynamics on the road and be decent off-road. We'll start with the dynamics in sport mode. Because the Outlander PHEV has a sport mode as well, the 2 electric motors work to ensure better traction around corners and quicker reaction to the accelerator pedal. The Outlander PHEV is not a speed demon, but it's not too bad around fast, long corners, and not so good around tighter, slower bends. The 0 to 100 km per hour time is 10.5 seconds, which doesn't sound much because this car has 224 horsepower, but it weighs 1900 kilograms, so that's slowing it down ever so slightly. The steering is too light for my liking, and it is geared more for off-road driving than dynamic handling. On roundabouts and crossings, you'll be turning the steering wheel a lot. On the plus side, the Outlander is easy to maneuver and the 360 camera helps you better place the car.
And what about off-road? This is my test slope, which you'll never have to tackle in real life, and I like to drive up it at an angle to limit traction on 2 wheels. The Range Rover Evoque didn't even break a sweat. The Volkswagen Passat Alltrack managed, but it wasn't particularly graceful about it. And the Honda CR-V Hybrid kept rolling back. The Outlander PHEV in normal mode, even with a bit of momentum, behaved like the CR-V Hybrid. In snow mode, it made it 3/4 of the way and then wouldn't budge. Finally, in lock mode, it barely managed to get over the top. Of course, it would be easier with a bit more aggressive tire or if the ground was frozen and therefore harder. But I was filming in early June, so it's dry grass or wet grass.
Generally, I'm cautiously pleased with the Outlander PHEV's powertrain. I understand what it's meant to achieve and how it would help me save money while offering a relatively spacious family car.
Because the boot, regardless of the traction battery, has 463 liters volume. The backrests have adjustable tilt, there is a decent amount of space in the back, the ground clearance is 19 centimeters, visibility is good, and you can have interior finished in quilted leather. What's Marek going to complain about?
Hold on tight, because I'm not going to take any prisoners. I'll start with the fundamentals. Charging. Why bother with CHAdeMO if you can charge only up to 22 kilowatts? Probably because it's cheaper than installing an onboard charger that could take 22 kilowatts via a Type 2 socket.
Let me explain. When charging from a home or Type 2 socket, You are using the car's onboard charger. Only so-called rapid charging happens from an external charger, i.e. that great box with cables sticking out of it. Perhaps at the time the Outlander PHEV was conceived, this seemed like the better solution, but 8 years later and 2 facelifts later, they could have changed it, unless majority of Outlander clients charge their cars at home anyway. Why is that so important? Because even if I use a cable to charge from a non-Shademo public charging station, I can unplug the cable at any moment, and even if the car is locked. That means someone can nick the cable.
The boot, or rather the electric tailgate mechanism, it takes about 10 seconds to open and another 10 seconds to close. To put it into context, I can press the tailgate button, get in the car, fasten my seatbelt, start the car and drive off, and the tailgate will still be closing, which I shall demonstrate in this cutaway.
Also, as the tailgate is opening or closing automatically, you can't speed it up manually like you would with hydraulic systems. Here you get a mechanism based on cocked wheels which you can only decouple by pressing a button in the cockpit.
Which takes us nicely into the cockpit. At first glance, not much has changed. There is no cubby behind the cup holders these days. Instead, there are more buttons scattered around the cockpit. Probably the cockpit was designed before many of the driver aids were invented, implemented and made mandatory, so now Mitsubishi is just filling empty spaces with more buttons.
On the left, obstructed by the steering wheel and the indicator stalk, are 3 spaces but only 2 buttons, one for the ESP and another one for the outdated trip computer. Above your left knee there are 6 more buttons, 5 of which are rectangular and one for the filler cap release is round. The other 5 are for driver aids, EV pedestrian warning sound and for the tailgate. A separate tailgate-related button is at the bottom of the center console, but it looks like no other button in the cockpit. That's the electric tailgate decoupling button I mentioned earlier. Next to it are a USB port and several other buttons, including blind spot monitoring, heated windscreen, heated steering wheel, and eco mode. Heated seats are next to the armrest. And next to those buttons are the charging mode buttons, the all-wheel drive mode switch, and a separate sports mode button.
An executive decision was made to cram everything into the existing interior, no questions asked, and here you go. But that's not all. The infotainment system is less bad than it used to be, but it's still very 90s. Back in the day, Mitsubishi had Rockford Fosgate audio system, which was basically a sticker on the dash. Now there is also a sticker, it says Mitsubishi Power Sound System, and the sticker is a bit crooked. There's Android Auto, but the car power button is pretty much invisible, and the plug where the key ignition would normally be, I get it, this bit of plastic was ordered by the million, so why bother redesigning it after just 20 years? The driver's seat is electrically adjusted with no memory function, but that's the least of its problems. The real problem is that you can't set it more upright, and there is limited lateral steering wheel adjustment, so I end up sitting with the top part of my back not touching the backrest.
Other changes as part of the second facelift are cosmetic, and only the most hardcore of Mitsubishi fanboys can spot the redesigned fascia. Prices of the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV start at €38,000. If we want to compare it with a petrol model, we'd have to go up a trim level and choose all-wheel drive. Then the PHEV costs €46,000 and the corresponding petrol €35,000. But the petrol car gets 7 seats as standard. This test car costs about €51,000, which is 10 grand more than a petrol equivalent. Mitsubishi will tell you it costs much less to drive 100 kilometers in its PHEV than in the petrol car, so you're saving money. And you'll probably get some tax breaks or other incentives to buy a PHEV. There's a 5-year warranty on the car and 8 years on the batteries, limited to 160,000 kilometers. And the Outlander PHEV is the best-selling PHEV in Europe, says Mitsubishi.
Overall, I get the impression that Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV is a way to persuade a more conservative buyer to try something new. Yes, you'd love another Lancer, but Mitsubishi axed it only 10 years ago. And so the salesman tells you, well, this here is like a Mitsubishi Pajero, like the IMF, like the Lancer Evo, all in one. Who wouldn't want that? If your previous car was a Mitsubishi, you'll feel right at home, but I'd like this interesting powertrain in an equally interesting packaging. And how about you? Would you buy an Outlander PHEV because it's not intimidating, or would you rather choose something else that feels a bit more modern? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, subscribe and join me every Friday, or just click one of the links on the screen. Also, I started a new channel about the gear I use to film my shoestring budget car reviews. It's called Marek's Gear, so please feel free to check it out and maybe subscribe as well. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.